All right, family. I got my heated blanket out today. So I was moving a little crazy trying to get. Oh, God. I keep wilding with this camera. Let me see what it looked like. All right, there we go. We can work with that. Forgive me. I keep hitting the little cord because the cord like right beside me. So I tap that mofo in a heartbeat. Trying to get set up for book club. So glad to be back with you this week. I miss you. Like if you wasn't with us for Tuesday, I definitely missed y'all the last couple of weeks. I enjoy book club and the books we get to read and all of that. So I hope you all have been having a, oh God, what's going on? Fantastic week. I turned down the music. I did. So we don't hear that in the background. You know, since we didn't do it the last couple of weeks, we started the new chakra on Tuesday night show. So we are doing our root chakra. So we're back on that. But I got my heart drum out, and I kind of want to use it when we're doing our breathing instead of me having to say everything. When you hear the breathe in. So I had to figure that out. My family, it's been a good week for me. Glad to be back home. Kentucky was cold. I really got a lot of content I need to start editing so I can put it up. You know what I mean? But red lights for the root chakra. I actually been sitting in here grooving a little bit, listening to some of my healing playlists before I got started with you all and trying to set it up. Remember the element for root is earth. The color is red, and it deals with your feelings of safety, security, stability, and grounded. Deals with your survival if you're stuck in survival space. So I need to turn this down because it's extra loud on the side. I can hear myself too clearly. Okay, so tonight I think I want to do the sun moon cleansing. And we're going to use the sun, and we're going to start with our little bowl. So every time we breathe in, we bring it down. We're going to repeat the same visualization from Tuesday. We're going to start with the bowl. Turn that down, son. I think I need to do some crown work. I have been itching a lot lately, and even when we did that, my hands automatically went straight to my head. So yeah, we gotta work on that. No wonder. a second. I'm gonna get the pendulum. I want to see how my crown doing. It is on. I know y'all hear me talking, family. I didn't think I turned on the blanket, but I did. No wonder it was a little warm. Here we go. All right, I just wanted to see how my crown was. God damn, here I go again with that mess. Let's see what we're working with now. Okay, we should be clutch this time. See, that's technology trying to tell me I'm doing too much. Like, bro, sit down. All right, all this just to see what my crown's saying. So, I want to get my pendulum. I should have checked before, but all right, well, my crown ain't doing too bad. So let me see. Maybe it's my intuition, my third eye. Let me see how that doing. My crown a little overactive. Understandable. Let's see, third eye. That's what it is. I ain't trusting my intuition like I need to. Check my crown again. And crown balance, but they both spin in the same direction. So I know I'm definitely off. I'm gonna go with the one that ain't spinning enough. Okay, so we're going to do the sun moon breathing. Sun moon cleansing for our breathing exercise. And again, it is going to start with visualizing a sun right here in our crown area. And with every breath in, we bring the sun down and release energy with every breath out. So it brings cleansing energy and breathe out the negative energy. Just release it. You don't have to necessarily pinpoint it in your mind. You just gotta intentionally think about releasing the energy. So I got my heart drum tonight, and every time you hear which one I want to use? That one. We're gonna breathe in. See, I got options. Not like this. So every time you hear, you breathe in. All right. I'm gonna do it with you all. So breathe in. Bring it down to your third eye and release. Breathe in. Bring it down to your throat and release. Breathe in. Bring it down to your heart and release. Breathe in. Bring it down to your solar plexus and release. Breathe in, bring it down to your sacral and release. Breathe in, bring it down to your root and release. Breathe in, bring it up to your sacral and release. Breathe in, bring it up to your solar plexus and release. Breathe in, bring it up to your heart and release. Breathe in, bring it up to your throat and release. Breathe in, bring it up to your third eye and release. Breathe in, bring it up to your crown and release. So with the visualization, we are going to stick with the God dang it. And it keeps turning. So we just having a rough night. I'm glad you could join my series, so forgive me, brother. But the visualization again is earth. If you breathe in with your eyes closed, we're going to keep the same visualization from Tuesday. I want you to picture yourself working in the garden of your design. On Tuesday, we talked about 10 different types of gardener, whether you're the experimental, whether you are the wildlife, the indoor, the urban, or the community gardener. I want you to visualize yourself tending to the garden. And then I want you to see yourself planting seeds in this garden of your mind. I want you to look at each and every seed that you plant. And on each seed, you see an affirmational word. You see safety. You see secure. You see love. You see worthy. You see diligent. You see hardworking. You see resilient. You see happiness. And you are taking your time and planting each and every one of those seeds very carefully and intentionally, and repeating them to yourself as you see the words or the affirmations that you want to plant in your mind's garden. Now, as you finish planting that last seed, I want you to speak affirmations on everything that you have planted. And I want you to repeat after me. I am safe and secure. I am grounded and centered. I am self-sufficient. I am financially secure. I love being in my body. I am safe and secure. I am grounded and centered. I am self-sufficient. I am financially secure. I love being in my body. All right, family. That is our visualization and our breathing for tonight. Hold on, let me see what's going on. I like wafers. I know that's right. I actually do love wafers. I eat them. It gives me a little nostalgia. Two things that I kind of eat. And my grandma loved wafers. And then I don't even really see them anymore. But when I do see them, I get them. It's these little coconut bars that were um, vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. I love them little coconut bars. All right. Okay. So, man, listen, it's been so long. I don't even remember where we are in the book. So we just gonna pick up. I think I know he's with that. He met that other guy who was in search of the key insights. Oh no, he went on that. They went on that trip. They left early in the morning because dude was trying to help him get out the country. The guy that saw him from the window, and he is going to go look for the third insight, I believe. And the main character decided to go ahead and go with him on that next day. What's going on? I got a bottle this time. Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, bro. They are delicious. Well, they were to me. I like coconut, so I'm biased. You know what I mean? I eat coconut. I drink coconut. I rub coconut on my body. I get coconut oil and everything. So, a matter of energy. We rose at dawn and drove east all morning in virtual silence. Early on, it feels too high. Early on, Will had mentioned that we would drive straight across the Andes into what he called high selva, an area consisting of forest covered foothills and plateaus, but he had said little else. I asked him several questions about the background and about our destination, but he had politely put me off, indicating he wanted to concentrate on driving. Finally, I had stopped talking altogether and had focused instead on the scenery. The views from the mountain peaks were staggering. About noon, when we had reached the last of the towering ridges, we stopped at an overlook to eat a lunch of sandwiches in the Jeep and gazed out at the wide, barren yellow valley. On the other side of the valley were smaller foothills, green with plant life. As we ate, Will said he would spend the night at the Vincent Lodge, an old 19th century estate which formerly belonged to the Spanish Catholic Church. Vicente, Vicente was now owned by a friend of his, he explained, and was operated as a resort specializing in business and scientific conferences. With only that brief explanation, we departed and rode silently again. An hour later, we arrived at Vicente. Entering the property through a large iron and stone gate, and proceeded northeast up a narrow gravel driveway. Once more, I asked a few probing questions concerning Vicente and why we were here, but as he had done earlier, Will brushed me aside my inquiries. Only this time, he suggested outright that I focused on the landscape. Immediately, the beauty of the Vicente touched me. We were surrounded by colorful pastures and orchards, and the grass seemed unusually green and healthy. It grew thickly, even under the giant oaks that rose up every 100 feet or so throughout the pastures. Something about these huge trees seemed incredibly attractive, but I couldn't quite grasp what it was. After about a mile, the road bent east and up a slight rise. At the top of a knoll was the lodge, and a large Spanish-style building constructed of hewn timbers and gray stone. The structure appeared to contain at least 50 rooms, and a large green porch covered the entire south wall. The yard around the lodge was marked by more gigantic oaks and contained beds of exotic plants and walkways trimmed with dazzling flowers and ferns. Groups of people talked idly on the porch and amongst the trees. As we got out the vehicle, Will lingered a moment and gazed out at the view. Beyond the lodge to the east, the land sloped gradually downward, then flattened out to the meadows and forests. Another range of foothills appeared bluish purple in the distance. "I think I'll go in and make sure they have room for us," Will said. "Ma, don't you spend some time looking around? You're going to like this place." "No kidding," I said. As he walked away, he turned and looked at me. "Be sure to check out the research gardens. I'll see you at dinner time." Will was obviously leaving me alone for some reason, but I didn't care why. I felt great and not the least bit apprehensive. Will had already told me that because of the substantial tourist dollar Vicente brought into this country, the government had always taken a hands-off approach to the place, even though the manuscript was often discussed here. Several large trees and a winding path toward the south attracted me, so I walked that way. Once I reached the trees, I could see that the walkway proceeded through a small iron gate and down several tiers of stone steps to a meadow filled with wildflowers. In the distance was an orchard of some kind and a small creek and more forest land. At the gate, I stopped and took several deep breaths, admiring the beauty below. "It's certainly lovely, isn't it?" a voice from behind asked. I turned quickly. A woman in her late 30s carrying a hiking pack stood beside me. "It certainly is," I said. "I've never seen anything quite like it." For a moment, we looked out at the open fields and at the cascading tropical plants in the terraced beds on each side of us. Then I asked, "Do you happen to know where the research gardens are?" "Sure," she said. "I'm heading that way now. I'll show you." After introducing ourselves, we walked down the steps and onto a well-worn path heading south. Her name was Sarah Lorner, and she was sandy-haired and blue-eyed, and could have been described as girlish except for her serious demeanor. Excuse me. We walked for several minutes in silence. "Is this your first visit here?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "I don't know much about this place." "Well, I've been here on and off almost a year now, so I can fill you in a bit. About 20 years ago, this estate became popular as a sort of international scientific hangout. Various scientific organizations had their meetings here, biologists and physicists mainly. Then a few years ago, she hesitated for an instant and looked at me. Have you heard of the manuscript that was discovered here in Peru? Yes, I have, I said. I heard about the first two insights. I wanted to tell her how fascinated I was with the document, but I held back, wondering whether to trust her completely. I thought maybe that was the case, she said. It looked as if you were picking up on an energy here. Excuse me. We were crossing a wooden bridge which traversed the creek. What energy? I asked. She stopped and leaned back against the railing of the bridge. Do you know anything about the third insight? Nothing. It describes a new understanding of the physical world. It says we humans will learn to perceive what was formerly an invisible type of energy. The lodge has become a gathering place for those scientists interested in studying and talking about this phenomenon. Then scientists think this energy is real? I asked. She was turning to walk across the bridge. Only a few, she said, and we take some heat for it. You're a scientist then. I teach physics at a small college in Maine. So why are some scientists disagreeing with you? She was silent for a moment, as if in thought. You have to understand the history of science, she said, glancing at me as if to ask whether I wanted to get deeper into the subject. I nodded for her to proceed. Think about the second insight for a moment. After the fall of the medieval worldview, we in the West suddenly became aware that we lived in a totally unknown universe. In attempting to understand the nature of this universe, we knew we had to somehow separate fact from superstition. In this regard, we scientists assumed a particular attitude known as scientific skepticism, which in effect demands solid evidence for any new assertion about how the world works. Before, we would believe anything. We wanted evidence that could be seen and grabbed with hands. Any idea that couldn't be proved in some physical way was systematically rejected. God knows, she continued, this attitude served us well with the more obvious phenomenon in nature, with objects such as rocks and bodies and trees, objects everyone can perceive no matter how skeptical they are. We quickly went out and named every part of the physical world, attempting to discover why the universe operated as it did. We finally concluded that everything that occurs in nature does so according to some natural law, that each event has a direct physical and understandable cause. She smiled at me knowingly. You see, in many ways, scientists have not been that different from others in our time period. We decided, along with everyone else, to master this place in which we have found ourselves. The idea was to create an understanding of the universe that made the world seem safe and manageable, and the skeptical attitude kept us focused on concrete problems that would make our existence seem more secure. We had followed the meandering path from the bridge through the small meadow into an area more densely covered with trees. With this attitude, she went on, science systematically removed the uncertain and esoteric from the world. We concluded, following the thinking of Isaac Newton, that the universe always operated in a predictable manner, like an enormous machine, because for a long time, that's all it could be proved to be. Events which happened simultaneously to other events, yet had no causal relationship, were said to occur only by chance. Then two investigations occurred which opened our eyes again to the mystery in the universe. Much has been written over the past several decades about the revolution in physics, but the changes really stem from two major findings, those of quantum mechanics and those of Albert Einstein. The whole of Einstein's work was to show that what we perceived as hard matter is mostly empty space with a pattern of energy running through it. This includes ourselves. And what quantum physics has shown is that when we look at these patterns of energy at smaller and smaller levels, startling results can be seen. Experiments have revealed that when you break apart small aspects of this energy, what we call elementary particles, and try to observe how they operate, the act of observation itself alters the results as if these elementary particles are influenced by what the experimenter expects. This is true even if the particles must appear in places they couldn't possibly go, given the laws of the universe as we know them. Two places at the same moment, forward or backward in time, that sort of thing. I don't know, that's funny because I generally say fear and faith can't reside in the same space at the same time. But with this thought, it essentially should be able to. Oh man, listen, we have a European store. As a matter of fact, I tried some that's right down the street from me, and they make an amazing shawarma, which I like shawarma. But generally, when I go in there, I try some of either the chocolates, the cookies, or something like that. So yeah, but they have an amazing shawarma. Let me see. She stopped to face me again. In other words, the basic stuff of the universe at its core is looking like a kind of pure energy that is malleable to human intention and expectation in a way that defies our old mechanistic model of the universe as though our expectations itself cause our energy to flow out into the world and affect other energy systems. It does. Your mind creates your reality. We talk about that. We said that the universe has no obligation to prove you wrong and is more likely to prove you right. So as you think, you will see affirmation of those thoughts. She shook her head. Unfortunately, most scientists don't take this idea seriously. They would rather remain skeptical and wait to see if we can prove it. Hey, Sarah, here we are over here, a voice called faintly from distance. To the right, about 50 yards through the trees, we could see someone waving. Sarah looked at me. I need to talk to those guys for a few minutes. I have a translation of the third insight with me. If you'd like to pick out a spot and read some of it while I'm gone, I sure would, I said. She pulled a folder from her pack and handed it to me and walked away. I took the folder and looked around for a place to sit down. Here, the forest floor was dense with small bushes and was slightly soggy, but to the east, the land rose toward what looked like another knoll. I decided to walk in that direction in search of dry ground. At the top of the rise, I was awestruck. It was another spot of incredible beauty. The gnarled oaks were spaced about 50 feet apart, and their wide limbs grew completely together at the top, creating a canopy overhead. On the forest floor grew broad-leaf tropical plants which stood 4 or 5 feet high and had leaves up to 10 inches in width. Yeah, none of my leaves that wide. I'm thinking about my plants. They're at least that long. The plants were interspersed with large ferns and bushes lush with white flowers. I picked out a dry place and sat down. I could smell the musty odor of the leaves and the fragrance of their blossoms. I feel like that's that chlorophyll in the air. I opened the folder and turned to the beginning of the translation. A brief introduction explained that the third insight brings a transformed understanding of the physical universe. Its words clearly echoed Sarah's summary. Sometime near the end of the second millennium, it predicted humans would discover a new energy which formed the basis of and radiated outward from all things, including ourselves. I pondered that idea for a moment, then read something that fascinated me. The manuscript said that the human perception of this energy first begins with a heightened sensitivity to beauty. As I thought about this, the sound of someone walking along the path below drew my attention. I saw Sarah at the exact moment she looked toward the knoll and spotted me. This place is great, she said when she reached me. Have you come to the part about the perception of beauty yet? Yes, I said. I'm not sure what it means. Further in the manuscript, she said, it goes into more detail, but I'll explain briefly. The perception of beauty is a kind of barometer telling each of us how close we are to actually perceiving the energy. This is clear because once you observe this energy, you realize it's on the same continuum as beauty. You sound like you see it, I said. She looked at me without the slightest self-consciousness. Yes, I do. But the first thing I developed was a deeper appreciation of beauty. But how does that work? Isn't beauty relative? She shook her head. The things that we perceive as beautiful may be different, but the actual characteristics we ascribe to beautiful objects are similar. Think about it. When something strikes us as beautiful, it displays more presence and sharpness of shape and vividness of color, doesn't it? It stands out. It shines. It seems almost iridescent compared to the dullness of other objects less attractive. I nodded. Look at this spot, she continued. I know you were blown away by it because we all are. This place leaps out at you. The colors and the shapes seem magnified. Well, the very next level of perception is to see the energy field hovering about everything. I must have looked bewildered because she laughed, then said very seriously, perhaps we should walk into the gardens. They're about a half a mile further south. I think you'll find them interesting. I thanked her for taking time to explain the manuscript to me, a total stranger, and for showing me around Vicente. She shrugged her shoulders. Okay. You seem like a person friend. You seem like a person friendly to what we're trying to do, she said. And we all know we're involved in a public relations effort here. For this research to continue, we must get the word out in the United States and elsewhere. The local authorities don't seem to like us much. Suddenly, a voice called out from behind. Excuse me, please. We turned to see three men walking up quickly towards us. All appeared to be in their late 40s and were dressed in stylish clothes. Would one of you tell us where the research gardens are? The taller of the three asked. Can you tell me what your business here is? Sarah asked in return. My colleagues and I have permission from the owner of this estate to examine the gardens and to speak with someone about the so-called research being conducted here. We are from the University of Peru. Sounds as though you're not in agreement with our findings, Sarah said, smiling, obviously trying to lighten the situation. Absolutely not, another man said. We think it's preposterous to claim that some mysterious energy can now be seen when it has never been observed before. Have you tried to see it? Sarah queried. The man ignored the question and asked again, can you direct us to the gardens? Of course, Sarah said. About 100 yards ahead of you will see a path turning east. Take it, and ahead maybe a quarter mile you'll run into them. Thank you, the tall man said as they hurried on their way. You sent them in the wrong direction, I said. Not really, she replied. There are gardens in that area, And the people there are more prepared to talk with these kinds of skeptics. We get people like this through here occasionally, and not just scientists, but curiosity seekers as well. People who can't begin to grasp what we're doing, which points out the problem that exists in scientific understanding. What do you mean? As I said before, the old skeptical attitude was great when exploring the more visible and obvious phenomenon in the world, such as trees or sunshine and thunderstorms. But there is another group of observable phenomenon more subtle that you can't study. In fact, you can't even tell they're there at all unless you spin or bracket your skepticism and try every possible way to perceive them. Once you can, then in return, then you return to your rigorous study. Interesting, I said. Ahead of the woods ended, and I could see a dozen of cultivated plots, each one growing a different type of plant. Most seemed to be food-bearing types, everything from bananas to spinach. At the eastern border of each crop was a wide gravel path which ran north to what appeared to be a public road. 3 metal outbuildings were spaced along the path. 4 or 5 people worked near each one. I see some friends of mine, Sarah said, and pointed toward the closest building. Let's go over there. I'd like for you to meet them. Sarah introduced me to 3 men and 1 woman, all of whom were involved in the research. The men spoke with me briefly, then excused themselves to continue their work. But the woman, a biologist named Marjorie, seemed free to talk. I caught Marjorie's eye. What exactly are you researching here? I asked. She appeared to be taken off guard, but smiled and finally answered. It's hard to know where to start, she said. Are you familiar with the manuscript? The first section of it, I commented. I just begun the 3rd insight. Well, that's what we're all about here. Come on, I'll show you. She mentioned for me to follow her, and I walked around the metal buildings to a plot of beans. I noticed they appeared to be exceptionally healthy with no noticeable insect damage or dead leaves. The plants were growing in what appeared to be a highly humid, almost fluffy soil, and each plant was carefully spaced. The stems and the leaves of one growing near, but never touched those of the next. The plant she pointed to the closest plant. We've tried to look at these plants as a total energy system and think of everything they need to flourish: soil, nutrients, moisture, light. What we have found is that the total ecosystem around each plant is really one living ecosystem, one organism, and the health of each part impacts the health of the whole. She hesitated, then said, the basic point is that once we start thinking about energy relationships all around the plant, then we started seeing amazing results. The plants in our studies were not particularly larger, but according to nutritional criteria, they were more potent. How was that measured? They contain more protein, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals. She looked at me expectantly, but that wasn't the most amazing thing. We found that these plants, which had the most direct human attention, were even more potent. What kind of attention? I asked. You know, she said, fiddling with the ground under them, checking them every day, that sort of thing. We set up an experiment with a control group, some getting special attention, others not. And the finding was confirmed. What's more, she continued, we expanded the concept and had a researcher not just give them attention, but mentally ask them to grow stronger. The person would actually sit with them and focus all his attention on concerning their growth. Did they grow? By significant amounts. They also grew faster. That's incredible. Yes, it is. Her voice trailed off as she watched an older man, appearing to be in his 60s, walk towards us. The gentleman approaching us is the micronutritionist, she said discreetly. He came down here about a year ago for the first time and immediately took a leave of absence from Washington State University. His name is Professor Haynes. He's done some great studies. As he arrived, I was introduced. He was a strongly built man with black hair, gray streaks at his temples. After some prodding from Marjorie, the professor began to summarize his research. He was most interested, he told me, in the functioning of the body's organs as measured by highly sensitive blood tests, especially as this functioning related to the quality of food eaten. He told me that what interested him most were the results of a particular study which showed that while nutritionally rich plants of the kind grown at Vicente increased the body's efficiency dramatically, the increase was beyond what could be reasonably expected from the nutrients themselves as we understood how they work in human physiology. Something inherent in the structure of these plants created an effective, not yet accounted for. I looked at Marjorie, then asked, then the focusing of the attention on the plants gave them something that boosts human strength in return when they're eaten? Is this energy mentioned in the manuscript? Hey man, listen, I talk about it when I cook my food. I like to put my love in there and you can taste it. So there is something to be said about setting your intentions and directing it to the work that you're doing. As he spoke, I couldn't help glancing periodically at Marjorie. Suddenly, she looked incredibly beautiful. Her body appeared long and slender, even under her baggy jeans and t-shirt. Her eyes and hair were dark brown, and her hair fell tapered curls around her face. I felt a powerful physical attraction. At the exact moment I became aware of this attraction, she turned her head and stared directly into my eyes and backed away from me a step. I've got to meet someone, she said. Maybe I'll see you later. She told Haynes goodbye and smiled coyly at me and walked past the metal building down the path. After a few more minutes of discussion with the professor, I wished him well and strolled back to where Sarah was standing. She was still talking intensely with one of the other researchers, but she followed me with her eyes as I walked. As I approached, the man she was with smiled, rearranging the notes on his clipboard, and walked into the building. Find out anything? Sarah asked. Yes, I said distractedly. It sounds like these folks are doing some interesting things. I was looking at the ground when she said, where did Marjorie go? As I glanced up, I see she had an amused look on her face. She said she had to meet someone. Did you turn her off? She smiled. She asked, smiling now. I laughed. I guess I did, but I didn't say a thing. You didn't have to, she said. Marjorie could detect a change in your energy. It's pretty obvious. I could see the way you were over there. A change in my what? In the energy that surrounds your body. Most of us have learned to see it, at least in a certain light. When a person has sexual thoughts, the person's energy field sort of swirls about and actually propels out towards the person with an object of attraction. I'm thinking, have I experienced that? I don't think it's just sexual thoughts, but I definitely have seen people's energy be connected to another person, and it kind of just go towards that person, or that person is taking their energy. So this struck me as totally fantastic, but before I could comment, we were distracted by several people coming out of the metal building. Time now for the energy projection, Sheriff said. You'll want to see this. We followed 4 young men, apparently students, to a plot of corn. As we walked closer, I realized that the plot was made up of 2 separate subplots,
each about 10 square feet. The corn in one was about 2 feet high. In the other, the plants were less than 15 inches. The four men walked to the plot containing the taller corn, then sat down, each one on a corner of the plot facing inward. On cue, they all seemed to focus their eyes on the plants. The late afternoon sun shone from behind me, bathing the plot in soft amber light, yet the woods beyond remained dark in the distance. The plot of corn and the students were silhouetted against the almost black background. Sarah was standing beside me. "This is perfect," she said. "Look, can you see that?" "What?" "They're projecting their energy onto the plants." I stared intently at the scene, but could not detect anything. "I can't see anything," I said. "Squat down lower then," Sarah said, and focused on the space between the people and the plants. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of light, but I concluded that just after an image or my eyes playing trick on me. I tried several more times to see something, then gave up. "I can't do it," I said. Standing, Sarah patted me on the shoulder. "Don't worry about it. The first time is the most difficult. Usually it takes some experimenting with the way to focus your eyes." One of the mediators looked over at us and brought his index finger up to his lips, so we walked back towards the building. "Are you going to be here at Vicente long?" Sarah asked. "Probably not," I said. "The person I'm with is looking for the last part of the manuscript." She looked surprised. I thought all of it had been located, though I guess I wouldn't know. I've been engrossed in the part that pertains to my work, and I haven't read much of the rest. I instinctively reached for my pants pocket, suddenly uncertain where Sarah's translation was. It was rolled up in my back pocket. "You know," Sarah said, "we found two periods of the day most conducive to seeing energy fields. One is sunset, the other is sunrise. If you want, I'll meet you at dawn tomorrow and we'll try again." She reached out for the folder. "That way," she continued, "I can make you a copy of this translation and you can take it with you." I pondered this suggestion for a few seconds, then decided it couldn't hurt. "Why not?" I said. "I have to check with my friend, though, and make sure we have enough time." I smiled at her. "What makes you think I can learn to see this stuff?" "Call it a hunch." We agreed to meet on the hill at 6 a.m., and I started with 1 mile trek to the lodge alone. The sun had completely disappeared, but its light still bathed the gray clouds along the horizon in hues of orange. The air was chilly, but no wind blew. At the lodge, a line was forming in front of the serving bar in the huge dining room. Feeling hungry, I walked toward the head of the line to see what food was being served. Will and Professor Haynes were standing near the front, talking casually. "Well," Will said, "how did the afternoon go?" "Great," I said. "This is William Haynes," Will added. "Yes," I said, "we met earlier." The professor nodded. I mentioned my early morning rendezvous the next day. Will saw no problem, as he wanted to find a couple of people he hadn't talked to yet and didn't anticipate leaving before 9 a.m. The line moved forward, then the people behind us invited me to join my friends. I stepped in beside the professor. "So, what do you make of what we're doing here?" Haynes asked. "I don't know," I said. "I'm trying to let it soak in a little. The whole idea of energy fields is new to me." "The reality of it's new to everyone," he said. "But the interesting thing is that this energy is what science has always been looking for. Some common stuff underlying all matter. Since Einstein, particularly physics, has sought in unified field theory. I don't know if this is it but at the very least, this manuscript has stimulated some interesting research." "What would it take for science to accept the idea?" I asked. "A way to measure it," he said. The existence of this energy is not that foreign, actually. Karate masters have talked about an underlying chi energy responsible for their seemingly impossible stunts, breaking bricks with their hands, and being able to sit in one place unmoved with four men trying to push them over. And we've all seen athletes make spectacular moves, twisting and turning, hanging in the air in ways that defy gravity. It's all a result of this hidden energy that we have access to. Of course, it won't really be accepted until more people actually see it themselves. Have you ever observed it? I asked. I've observed something, he said. It really depends on what I've eaten. How so? Well, the people around here who readily see the energy field eat mostly vegetables, and they usually eat only those highly potent plants they grown themselves. He pointed ahead to the food bar. This is some of it. Though thank goodness they serve some fish and fowl for the old guys like me who are addicted to meat. But if I force myself to eat differently, yes, I can see something. I asked him why he didn't change his diet for longer periods of time. I don't know, he said. Old habits die hard. The line moved forward, and I ordered only vegetables. The three of us joined the larger table. Thanks for the new follower. I appreciate you on TikTok. The three of us joined the larger table of guests and talked casually for an hour. Then Will and I walked out to the Jeep to remove our gear. Have you seen these energy fields? I asked. He smiled and nodded. My room's on the first floor, he said. Yours is on the third, room 306. You can pick up your key at the desk. What time is it? Where we at? 8 o'clock. All right. Let me see how much we got left. Pages. That's a pause spot, but I don't want to pause right there. So I'll just read till I get tired. See what's cracking. The room had no phone, but a large attendant I saw in the hallway assured me someone would knock on my door at 5 a.m. sharp. I laid down and thought for a few minutes. The afternoon had been long and full, and I understood Will's silence. He wanted me to experience the third insight in my own way. The next thing I knew, someone was banging on the door. I looked at my watch, 5 a.m. When the attendant knocked again, I said, "Thank you," in a voice loud enough for him to hear, then rose and looked out the small window frame. The only sign of morning was a pale glow of light toward the east. I walked down the hall and showered, then dressed quickly and went downstairs. The dining room was open, and a surprising number of people were moving about. I ate only fruit and hurried outside. Strands of fog drifted across the ground and clung to the distant meadows. Songbirds called one another from the trees. As I walked away from the lodge, the very top of the sun breached the horizon towards the east. The color was spectacular. The sky was a deep blue above a bright peach horizon. I arrived at the knoll 15 minutes early, so I sat down and leaned against the trunk of a large tree, fascinated by the web of gnarled branches growing out above my head. In a few minutes, I heard someone walking towards me along the path, and I looked that way, expecting to see Sarah. Instead, I saw someone I didn't know, a man in his mid-40s. He left the path and walked my way without noticing me. When he was within 10 feet, he saw me with a start, which made me flinch also. "Oh, hello," he said in rich Brooklyn accent. He was dressed in jeans and hiking boots and looked exceptionally fit and athletic. His hair was curly and receding. I nodded. "Sorry about walking up on you so suddenly," he said. "No problem." He told me his name was Phil Stone, and I told him who I was and that I was waiting for a friend. You must be doing some research here, I added. Not really, he replied. I work for the University of Southern California. We're doing studies in another province in the rain forest depletion, but whenever I get a chance to drive, I drive over here and take a break. I like hanging out where the forests are so different. He looked around. Do you realize some of these trees here are close to 500 years old? This is truly a virgin forest, a rare thing. Everything in this is in perfect balance. The larger trees filtering the sunlight, allowing a multitude of tropical plant life to thrive underneath. The plant life in the rainforest is old too, but it grows differently. It's basically a jungle. This is more like what an old forest looked like in a temperate zone, such as the United States. I've never seen anything like this there, I said. I know, he said. Only a few remain. Most of the ones I know were sold by the government to lumber interests, as though all they could see in the forest was this board feet of lumber. Damn shame that anyone would mess with a place like this. Look at the energy. You can see the energy here, I asked. He looked at me closely, as though deciding whether to elaborate. Yes, I can, he said finally. Well, I haven't been able to, I said. I tried yesterday when they were meditating with the plants at the garden. Oh, I couldn't see fields at first either, he said. I had to start by looking at my fingers. How do you mean? Let's move over here, he said, pointing to an area where the trees parted slightly and the blue sky showed through overhead. I'll show you. When we arrived, he said, lean back and touch the tips of your index fingers together. Keep the blue sky in the background. Now separate the tips about an inch and look at the area between them. What do you see? Dust on the lens of my eye? Ignore that, he said. Take your eyes out of focus a little bit and move the tips closer, then further apart. As he talked, I moved my fingers around, unsure what he meant by taking my eyes out of focus. I finally placed my gaze vaguely on the area between my fingers. Both fingertips went slightly blurry, and as this happened, I saw something like strands of smoke stretching between my tips. Good grief, I said, and explained what I saw. That's it, he said. Now just play with it a while. I touched all four fingers, then palms and forearms. In each case, I continued to see streaks of energy between the body parts. I dropped my arms and looked at Phil. Oh, you want to see mine, he asked. He stood up and stepped back a few feet, positioning head and torso to the sky would be directly behind them. I tried for a few minutes, but a noise behind us broke my concentration. I turned and saw Sarah. Phil stepped forward and grinned broadly. Is this the person you've been waiting for? As Sarah approached, she too was smiling. Hey, I know you, she said, pointing at Phil. They embraced warmly. Then Sarah looked at me and said, sorry I'm late. My mental alarm didn't go off for some reason. But now I guess I know why. I gave you two a chance to talk. What have you been doing? He just learned how to see the fields between his fingers, Phil said. Sarah looked at me. Last year, Phil and I were up here at this very spot learning to do the same. She glanced at Phil. Let's put our backs together. Maybe he could see the energy between us. They stood back to back in front of me. I suggested they move closer, and they stepped towards me until the space between us was about 4 feet. They were silhouetted against the sky, which was still a dark blue in that direction. To my surprise, the space between them looked lighter. It was yellow or yellowish pink. He sees it, Phil said, reading my expression. Sarah turned and grabbed Phil by the arm, and they slowly stepped away from me so that their bodies were perhaps 10 feet away. Surrounding their upper torso was a whitish pink field of energy. Okay, Sarah said seriously. She had walked over and crouched down beside me. Now look at the scene here, the beauty. Stop at this. I was immediately awed by the shapes and forms around me. I seemed to be able to focus on the massive oaks in a total way, not merely on part, but on the whole form at once. I was immediately struck by the unique shape and configuration of the limbs each displayed. I looked from one to the other, turning all around. Doing this somehow increased the feeling of presence of each oak exuded to me, as though I was seeing them for the first time, or at least fully appreciating them for the first time. Suddenly, the tropical foliage underneath the huge trees attracted my attention, and then again, the unique form each plant exhibited. I also noted the way each plant grew together with its own kind in what struck me like little communities. For instance, the tall banana tree type plants were often encircled by small philodendrons, who themselves were poised among even smaller fern like plants. When I looked at these many environments, I was again struck by their uniqueness of the outline and presence. Less than 10 feet away, a particular foliage plant caught my eye. I had often owned just this type of as a house plant, a particular variegated form of philodendron. I'm trying to think because philodendrons, that's my family. I grow them plants. Dark green, its foliage branched out into about 3 or 4 feet in diameter. The shape of the plant field seemed perfectly healthy and vibrant. Yeah, focus on that one, but loosely, Sarah said. As I did, I played with the focus of my eyes. At one point, I tried to focus on the 6 inches to one side of each plant. Gradually, I began to pick up glimpses of light. Then, with a single adjustment of my focus, I could see the bubble of white light encircling the plant. Yeah, so when you talking about philodendrons, I love them. They're my babies. I got the Prince of Orange, I think, the Black Cardinal, the Moonlight. And then I got this snake plant. I want to see. He's trying to get his life together. But I like my snake plant baby too. I ain't even gonna lie to you. So family, I'm in town this month, so except for probably Christmas, I ain't gonna do too much work then, but I appreciate your support. We see you Tuesday, and I think we are going to start talking about the tools a gardener use. I don't know. But it definitely will be on still on reprogramming our mind. I don't know where I want to go next. But we'll figure it out by Tuesday. If I don't see you Tuesday, I look forward to seeing you Thursday. And family, I hope you have a great weekend. Stay safe. And gratitude to you. I wanted that music playing. Can you hear that? Let me see if I can hear it.